Tell me if this sounds like a situation you've been in. So, there our heroes were at the end of the first arc, the first big bad defeated, but not without leaving some questions to answer. A lot of them involve personal character backstories, and I have to be sure that I bring all of those into the next arc of this campaign and weave them in, but how do I do that? And more so, good lord, these characters are strong now. How am I supposed to challenge them? Well, luckily, James, DM with a day job, and I have teamed up to answer that using my own campaign prep as an example. So let's get into it, and if you can, please hit those like, share, subscribe buttons. It really does help the channel, and remember that I answer all of the comments that I receive, or at least try my best to. For context, we're going to be looking at my murder mystery Victorian London campaign. They've solved the first big arc of the mystery, but it's been made very clear that there's a lot more in-depth that's happening than what they have originally thought. There's something more sinister afoot, especially involving the royal family. We left off with the party saving the day at a ball. They destroyed the chimeras, they saved the day from the evil necromancer. All of them are proclaimed heroes, fanfare, all that jazz. But they're also all very aware that they have more to dig into. And there's a lot of things to figure out with these more suspicious characters that keep recurring in the background. First things first, it's really helpful to start backwards and work your way forwards when planning a campaign. I know I want this to end with a fight with the evil queen, but transparently, my party is insanely powerful, and that's my own doing, unfortunately, but I'm going to need to get them knocked down a little bit as they get closer and closer to fighting this big bad if I want her to stand any sort of chance in hell. I also need to make sure that whatever I'm planning also involves the characters' factions that they're a part of. So the Medical Society, which is a secret group of necromancers, the Crown, which I've already established is also playing the bad guy, and also the Church. There's also plenty of questions that my players want answered that I can also answer on what I would call side quests. So things that don't necessarily directly involve the queen, but might have a couple of loose threads that they could tug far enough back and see something happening. One of those threads includes a horror story that I took straight from a ghost tour that I took when I was in London. Aside from the 2 crypts that I know my players want to go dig through to find some answers with Speak with the Dead now that they've gotten it, the Gray Man has been murdering people in attacks at 50 Berkeley Square for the past month or 2 in a haunted attic.
There's always a point where the villain's villainy has not yet fully ripened but has started to seep into the land, and there's this small opportunity for you to stop the evil before it gets too far. Take Gandalf in The Hobbit. He recognizes that evil is starting to creep in the land. He's read the tea leaves, so he leaves the party of Thorn behind outside Mirkwood while he goes to investigate the necromancer.
Exactly, and I have an evil queen and her all-seeing advisor the party will likely be squaring up against at the end of this season. But with this Gray Man, there was actually supposed to be a quest that the characters went on earlier. This was actually presented to them earlier on in the campaign, but they didn't have the time to take that quest. They were distracted with some much more obvious and more pressing situations.
Gray Man is a servant of our eventual villain, the Lich Queen. Through him, her evil is going to seep into land, and our players are going to start to see clues of what's happening. What is this character doing that seems small that can contribute to the eventual plot, balloon out of control so the players suddenly realize, oh god, we gotta stop them now?
The best part is that I set this up as a teaser. So they know it's a problem, but the chimeras were causing a much more pressing problem that they had to deal with. It kept them from digging too much and it kept them distracted. So this works well with what James is saying. He's had time to make things start happening. And like I said, I need a way to get them potentially knocked down, and frankly, I give them copious amounts of automatic passes due to the trinket system that I've implemented in this game. That's for a future video, as is the pros and cons of metacurrency, but for now, let's move on.
One of the seminal moments in modern medicine happened in London around the time of Misty Step's campaign. It happened at the Broad Street pump where Jon Snow, no, not the Jon Snow you're thinking of, different Jon Snow, proved that germs cause cholera. Disease is often linked to necromancy, and it's probably not the first thing the players are going to think of when the bodies start piling up, so let's use that.
This is a perfect way to bring in my Necromancer Society that I mentioned, and it's great to always bring in another faction. 2 of my players are closely intertwined into this society, and they'll immediately be interested in that. The Necromancers Guild is also able to look into things as well if bodies start appearing, but of course, having NPCs help always does come with a cost. Mostly the risks to those NPCs.
Because we want to turn up the heat on the players slowly, we're going to do this in 3 stages. In stage 1, murder victims are found, but the disease is not the cause of the death. The players are going to be looking into that and ignoring the disease because these corpses are part of a plot, a ritual to unleash plague on the city. They're just using the corpse as a carrier. That's not what killed them. If the players encounter this corpse, they get near enough to it, let's say within 15 feet, then the next day I would have the players make a Constitution save DC 10. They make it? Fine, cool. Heroes are made of sterner stuff. But the other NPCs, the other characters in the game world, are not. And some of them are going to start getting sick. We'll use the condition poison to represent that. We'll start stage 2 a few sessions later. Let the players kind of simmer on that while they go deal with other problems. Maybe they forget it's even an issue.
So the Gray Man is a minion, and he's been killing people. And even once he's taken care of, and no longer a direct threat, that poison condition is going to linger and seriously impact any NPCs that might come into play in this scenario. That might include their investigator friends, their assistants and ladies-in-waiting that might help them out on these. Anyone who has seen the body, anyone who has touched the body. In other words, all of their usual suspects that they would go to for information. I love this because it gives me an opportunity to bring in some other quests. With time passing and this all happening in the background, again, we have at least 1 if not 2 crypts that they're going to want to explore, and I know I want a heist because I think it sounds fun. They want to pull information from the Grand Diviner's office, and if I roll well enough, I would love to see one of my characters actually get kidnapped. Maybe an NPC, maybe a player character, but either way, I want it to be really dramatic. And more importantly, I want it very distracting from the ritual happening right under their noses. Add in rumors and scandals and parties of the season, and who knows how long it might take for them to circle back to that Constitution saving throw they had to make all that time ago. I love the idea of this thing sort of cooking in the background and becoming more and more ominous and more dreadful, and slowly but surely becoming more obvious as more people fall sick and more people fall victim, including the people that they care about.
But then a body is found, somebody that was at the first crime scene, but they didn't die from any violence. They clearly died from some sort of an illness, the disease. The con save is going to go up to DC 15, and any players that fail are automatically going to have any necromancy spells they cast go up 1 level without them having to spend the extra spell slot, because unexplained benefits usually cause the players to start looking around trying to figure out when the trap is going to close on them. Meanwhile, any NPCs are now desperately sick, and they're going to get the incapacitated condition instead of the poison condition. Now, when we hit stage 3, we're going into full undeath. It is a Lich Queen as our main villain. We're always going to get to full undead eventually. Any beings that died of the plague are now going to have matured and rise as ghouls. The Lich Queen isn't well served by mindless undead like skeletons and zombies. She wants intelligent undead, beings that can stalk, hunt, kill, and turn for her. And meanwhile, our players are now making their saves against this disease at disadvantage, and they will start suffering the poison condition and eventually the incapacitated condition. I hope they save some spells to help themselves.
Believe me, these guys are really OP because of the trinket system that I use, and again, more so on that on a different video, but they get rewarded essentially with automatic successes should they choose to use them. So if they want to burn that resource with those con saves, they're more than happy to, but that is 1 less resource then that they can use against my BBEG, or Babeeg. And besides, there's a cleric on the team, a grave cleric at that, so as long as she's not kidnapped or has a crisis of faith or anything, they'll be able to walk it off. And maybe that crisis of faith is how I loop in the church in this situation. The crown is already involved with the Lich Queen after all, and the characters will have to wrestle with the idea of abandoning or betraying the crown and stopping her. Hopefully this helped showcase some really cool stuff that you can do with a bit of forethought and planning in your campaigns. I'm not taking away player agency, but I am putting in a consequence if they decide to shove off this as a non-issue, or they think that it's a one-off side quest. If you're interested in me fully fleshing out a quest and watching me actually go in depth with the plot line and the prep that I do for these campaigns, please let me know in the comments and I would be happy to do a video on that showing that. I am always excited to talk about this campaign in particular, and I'm really excited to plant those little seeds in this garden of dread for my players to find. Thank you again to James, DM with a day job, and tell me in the comments how you would plan a campaign with these long-term effects. See you guys next time.